This is an overview of my paper, Artificial Intelligence and Privacy. And I wrote this to provide a roadmap for all the different ways that AI affects privacy, all the different issues that arise, and what we should think about them. And then just some overall thoughts on how AI should be regulated to address privacy issues, how we should understand it. And so let me dive into this and provide a little bit of background, and then I'll provide my roadmap for the issues. So we're living in an age where we've seen the rise of AI. This is something you can't escape. It's in the news all the time. Uh, we're now, everybody seems to have AI. AI is everywhere. But in fact, AI is actually an old technology. It's both old and new. A lot of the technologies behind AI were developed for years and years and years. Some of them are more than 50 years old. What's new today is that we have a lot more computing power and a lot more data. And this is supercharging these technologies in ways that are really profound and that do create a lot of new issues. But these are issues that have been percolating with privacy law, involved with privacy law for a very long time. It's just that now they're kind of on steroids. So I think it's wrong to see AI as just totally new, as a total, break from the past. Um, AI today is actually a kind of a rebranded name for, a lot of the things for AI is kind of rebranded AI, and it's taking off because everyone calls AI is so sexy, they call it AI. But AI is basically math plus data. It's actually not intelligent, and it's not really even artificial. It is a set of algorithms, and AI is actually not just one thing, it's actually many different things. There are many different kinds of AI. So when we talk about AI, it's actually an umbrella term for many different things that fall under it, many different kinds of algorithm. But it's actually not what the people think about AI, which is sentient machines. People think, oh, these smart machines are going to, be like humans and think like humans. It's not how this works. And I think that it's important to understand too that AI is not an unexpected upheaval for privacy. In many ways, it's the future that has long been predicted. This is something that if you look at the development of this, we see this being developed years and years and years before the media ever gets hold of it. Before everyone's talking about AI, we have a lot of the technologies still in existence long before that time. Now, I think that AI's privacy problems actually involve uh, things that have been going on forever. And these are problems involving the gathering and processing of personal data. So they're things that privacy law has already been grappling with. Um, and I kind of caution against seeing some kind of magic line that separates privacy issues in AI from those in the general digital age. Because I think basically AI issues are digital issues with privacy. Uh, so there isn't this kind of magic category of AI. AI is just a kind of extreme uh, uh, version of some of these issues, but it's not like totally unique. It's a kind of continuation of something that has already been happening. And so I think it's important to understand there isn't some kind of like whole separate world. And that's the key. I want to rip apart or blur that this idea that AI is somehow separate and somehow so different that it just doesn't belong in privacy law. I think, though, that AI exposes very starkly the longstanding shortcomings, infirmities, and wrong approaches with privacy law. So I think AI really calls out some of the issues with privacy law. And so existing privacy law is not adequate to task. And I think AI shows exactly why. But that doesn't mean that we should turn away from privacy law. It means that we need to take a deeper look at privacy law and what it's doing and what it should do. So I think we need to really understand these problems together with AI and privacy. I don't think like, carving out AI and into its own unique bucket is the answer. I think it's really to understand AI and privacy together and understand the big picture and to rethink privacy law generally rather than to try to create some special universe just for AI. So my roadmap, or what are the issues? Where does AI create some privacy challenges, and what should we do about that? And actually, here's a kind of overview chart that I made for the article, and I share it here on this slide, which it sort of captures that. I don't want to walk through this so that you really briefly, so you kind of see what the issues are. So let's go and start. Broadly speaking, when you look at these types of things, I'd say there's kind of two types of issues. One are caused by inputs and the other is caused by outputs. You put data into AI, the input, and there are problems with the collection of the data to put into the AI. And then there are problems with the outputs. And like, what does the AI do to the data when it's being put into these algorithms? So we're going to first look at inputs. Actually, take that back. We're going to first look at legal architectures and approaches, the general way that privacy law works. And two things I want to talk about broadly: individual control and harm and risk. So individual control, and I say beyond individual control because I think that privacy law needs to move beyond this. Privacy law is obsessed with individual control. It is very much focused on giving individuals control over their information. I think that this approach is wrong, and I think it does not work. And AI calls this really starkly to question. AI is just too complicated for individuals to understand. And so I think that, it really makes it clear that why individuals just can't possibly be expected to figure out their privacy when it comes to AI. Because basically, I think ultimately, what do people want, or do when they decide whether to share their data for different things? It's they do a cost benefit analysis. They look at, okay, what are the benefits? That's pretty easy. Oh, cool, this technology does this. Oh, cool, the technology does that. Oh, this is a neat app. I want to use it. And it's easy to kind of see the benefits of it. Then they weigh it against the risks. Okay, what are the dangers of it? How could it hurt me? Is it worth the cost that I must do for the app? Or the technology, and that's where it becomes really tricky. How can you assess the cost? The individual really can't do that very well, and that's really the problem with AI. It's just, how can you know exactly what is going to happen with the AI and what's going to happen with your data and what the AI is going to do? It's really hard to figure out the risks here. So the law, in AI typically does try to move to a harm and risk analysis, which I think is generally a good approach. I think a lot of the existing AI laws that we're seeing being passed recently are just not that great, but at least they're looking at the right issue, which is harm and risk. But I think they could be improved. But generally, I think if you're looking at harm and risk, you need to look at the two sides of it. First is ex ante, and the other is ex post. Ex ante means, before a technology is deployed, we want to make sure it's safe. And we do that with other products. You can't just put a car on the market or a plane on the market and have it be, dangerous. We have regulators to make sure that it's safe, right? Same thing with food, right? We have inspections and food safety requirements. Same with drugs. But then we also have an ex post set of responsibilities as well. Like, if a product or if something causes harm, there's redress. Someone who's harmed, car, you know, blows up, or glue to a car doesn't work, and your Tesla falls apart. There's ex post remedies for this. That is something the law also does. I think that has to be the case with AI too, and with privacy as well. We need both ex ante and ex post. Okay, data collection. And so now we're going to look at the input side. What I just talked about before was kind of a meta side on how the law should where it should focus on. But let's look at data collection. And there are two big issues with data collection that I see: scraping and consensual data collection. Scraping involves the gathering of personal data in an automated fashion, uh, typically, by having bots go and gather this data from the internet, and they gather billions upon billions of pieces of data. I sound like Carl Sagan in a way. Billions and billions, but it is billions. It's gathering lots of data from everywhere, from various conversations on social media to pictures people post to their profiles on LinkedIn to all sorts of other things. Anything that they can grab, they grab it. And a lot of the data that's being scraped from the internet is personal data. And I think that, and I wrote a whole paper on this, that scraping is a privacy nightmare, that almost every principle from privacy law is violated by scraping. Um, Everything. There's no security, there's no protection against secondary use, people have no rights in the data, there's absolutely no controls on the data. It's just taken, and then it's kind of used in whatever way the companies that scraped it want to use it for, with nothing, no protections, nothing. So how do they do this? How do they get into this kind of law-free zone? Well, the justification they use is it's publicly available. And there are a lot of laws in the United States that exempt publicly available information. I think this is wrong both normatively and legally. I think if we look at the law, it's actually not so clear that all publicly available information is free for the taking. The laws actually, if you look at the state laws, they define publicly available information differently. Some definitions are broad and other ones are more narrow. So a lot of the scrapers are actually violating some of the laws by scraping data that actually it does not fall under those publicly available information exceptions. And then the GDPR and the privacy law of many other countries does not make a publicly available information exception. So those laws are being violated by scraping. Now, I think it's also normatively a bad thing as well. Just because data is available to the public does not mean that there's no protection against it. Uh, well, I put data on LinkedIn. It doesn't mean that I'm just totally like giving up anything that could be used with that data. I, you know, I, LinkedIn provides me certain rights. I can take down my profile. I can change my profile. I can correct my profile. I can do all sorts of things with the data that I have there. But scrapers basically just, well, you don't get those abilities anymore. And I think that's just wrong as a normative matter. I think that, if we look at privacy protection, it applies even if it's publicly available. And we're seeing this happen in the law. We see the Supreme Court say that, even though location data is something that is public movements in public, that still has privacy implications. That's Carpenter. And we also have other instances where the law, even in the United States, recognizes this. So the Fair Credit Reporting Act, which regulates credit reporting agencies, A lot of the data that they gather is actually publicly available information in public records. And that law, provides protections of that data, even though it's from public records. So I think, it's a normative matter. There are good reasons why we still want to protect information, even if it's publicly available, because there's a lot about people that is publicly available, and a lot that people can't really do anything about. I have a website, uh, a professor website. I'm on the faculty website page. My picture is there. My bio is there. My personal information is there. And I didn't put it there. Uh, I don't think any company should have the right just to grab that information and grab my photo and use my name in any way they want to use, or my biographical information in any which way they want. Nor do I think they should be able to use my photo in any which way they want. Just because my photo is on the GW website doesn't mean that I should be used for facial recognition, or that my photo could be used for other things. Or just because I put a video online does not mean that an AI company should be able to take the video, feed it into their AI algorithm, and then generate a clone of me that would, you know, basically, be me. And we have privacy protections against these things. We have appropriation of name or likeness, which says, hey, you can't even though my image and my voice can be found available online. They just can't go using that. There are rights that I have in my image and my voice and my name. So. There's also consensual data collection. That is, I put consensual in quotes because I think a lot of data collection is not consensual. Consent is a fiction, so it's being gathered in ways that are, I think, uh, you know, pretty problematic. People are kind of forced to consent or consent without really understanding what they're consenting to. And we see companies increasingly doing this for their AI. They're like, well, we'll just change our privacy notice to say that we now let, by using our service, by using our app, by using our technology, you consent to us allowing us to use your data for train our AI or do all this other stuff. I don't think that's really consensual. I think they're just, essentially just extracting from people the an extra use of their data that they want to use it for. And so that's a problem. So I think there's a lot of problems with the collection of data for AI. And AI is very data hungry. You need a lot of data for these algorithms. They depend on massive quantities of data to work. So they have to get the data from somewhere, and they're going to get it from scraping, or they're going to change their privacy notices to kind of get it by people, being forced to give it in order to use the site. And so ultimately, I think privacy consent's a fiction, and AI demonstrates just how farcical that fiction really is. Now, data generation. We're going to shift to the output side of this. And AI does a number of different things with data generation: inference, simulation, and malevolent material. So let's first look at inference. AI is an inference generation. That's one of the things it does really. And then it is able to see patterns in the data. And from these patterns, it can make inferences about people. And these inferences are, can be quite revealing of information that people don't expect to be revealed. And this is the problem, that machine learning algorithms are able to make many surprising inferences that people have no control over what organizations know. And that's the problem, that if the law has this myth that put individuals in control of their data. The problem is that if I have no idea, I give up this data and I think, oh, I'm just giving out just innocuous data about my purchases at the store. That's not sensitive. It's not important. It's not revealing anything about me. But then they dump it into an algorithm that can figure out like all sorts of things about me, like my religion or my political beliefs or my health or other things. Now, all of a sudden, I never would have revealed that to this company, but they're able to know this. So how do I really have meaningful control over what I'm disclosing to the company if they can use these sophisticated data analytics to learn all this other stuff that I didn't want them to know? And that's the problem with the control model and why AI really kind of makes that model kind of obsolete. And we also have the problem of simulation. AI can simulate human behavior. And the typical response that the law does, privacy law's response to these kind of things, and AI law too, generally, it's like, well, if we just disclose to people that it's AI, that if you're talking to a chatbot or you're on a chat, it could be AI. Or if you're on the phone and you're talking to somebody, it could be AI, not a real person. And if you just disclose to people, that's going to solve the problem. But the problem is that that doesn't work. And it doesn't work because AI simulation of humans can be very powerful in manipulation. And they can be very manipulative even if people know it's AI. And I think the movie Her really illustrates this incredibly well. This is a movie where this guy falls in love with an AI bot in his phone. The operating system of his phone is this AI uh, component. And he falls in love with the AI. And he knows it's AI, but that doesn't stop the fact that he starts to come under the AI's thrall. And that's the danger here that we have is that even if we disclose or have transparency, it might not be enough protection because the AI could have these tremendously manipulative powers by simulating human behavior. So we need to think about how do we regulate that. Malevolent material. AI can allow the creation of a lot more harmful material, a lot more fraud. It can mimic your voice. It can you'll be used to create a fake video of you, create a fake photo of you, create all sorts of fake disinformation about people and trick people. It can create like a fake, you could get a call from me. Hey, it's Professor Solov and you're in my privacy class. And guess what? I need to know your some of your personal information for some purpose for grading or who knows whatever it might be. It could be a trick. Someone could call you up from the records office. There's all sorts of ways that AI could be used to engage in fraud or harm, and it can supercharge that. And so we need to figure out that issue. Decision making. AI can be used to help in decision making, and it can have a lot of problems here. Prediction, automation, and decisions and bias are my three broad categories of areas where AI can create some problems in decision making. So prediction first. AI can be used to make predictions of the future. This is at least how it's sold. And I wrote a whole paper on this. AI can uh, make predictions about, uh, will someone be successful in this job? Will someone be successful in college? Will someone be successful in law school? Will people commit crimes in the future? And these are used to make decisions about them. Will people be a good credit risk or not? And they're trying to look at data to make these predictions. And so in a paper with Yuki Matsumi, we wrote this piece actually saying that these predictions are not what they're sold as. They're actually not predicting the future. They're based on past data, in fact. And they do more than just try to forecast the future. They actually shape it. They become self-fulfilling prophecies. They take past data about other people's behavior, and then they impose that and make the assumption that if you match what other people did in the past, that you're likely then to do all the other things that they have done. And that becomes a problem because the future doesn't always repeat the past. And we shouldn't necessarily reify data about the past into the future. It can lock in bias and other problems from the past into the future. It also, um, uh, there's a lot of problems here. And I'll talk about them too when we get to bias. So automation. Automation is making decisions in an automated way. And the problem here is that automated decisions are, uh, are skewed. And they're skewed because they focus on quantifiable data that they can ingest. These algorithms have to ingest data and it has to have some standardization. And if there are other elements that aren't standard elements, they kind of get thrown out. There's a lot of idiosyncratic, unusual things that just don't quite fit into the algorithm that just are kind of thrown away as just extra extraneous data. Let's just get to the things that we've identified as like the algorithm thinks are the most important and are also the most quantifiable, and then just get rid of the other stuff that they can't quite quantify and standardize. But a lot of times it's important stuff. And when you take that away, you make a decision worse. You take away context, you take away nuance, you take away a lot of other things that has effects on the decision itself. And so automated decisions are different because they're automated. And that's, I think, a reason to regulate them differently. I think that's why I think the GDPR is right to say, hey, wait a second, when we have automation, that should raise some extra concerns. I think the GDPR is a little too narrow in what it defines as automation as being solely automated. But I think whenever you have automation and it's going to skew a decision or affect a decision, that's important to look at. You also have decisions and bias. These are issues where bias becomes part of the decision. And generally, AI has been sold as it's a solution to bias, right? Computers don't have bias like humans do. Computers are neutral. The problem is that they're not neutral. They're not neutral because the data that the algorithms are trained on is biased. It's human data, data about humans. And data about humans are biased because humans are biased. And everything humans do and all the data is going to reflect all of the biases and imperfections in humans. And then when the algorithm learns that, essentially the algorithm learns the bias and then it perpetuates the bias by reifying in it, bakes the bias in to the output. Garbage in, garbage out. And that is the problem. uh, that's a danger because now people think, oh, the AI, it's neutral. It's not a human deciding it, but it is biased, and it can be even worse. And the other problem is that AI can give rise to new forms of discrimination. So it can give rise to, other factors. So you can tell AI, like, okay, let's try to avoid using certain factors in decisions. Let's avoid using race. So AI will try to then find other things that it might use, but it'll notice in the data, well, hey, you know what? People who live in a particular place, they seem to disproportionately not get jobs or disproportionately get arrested. Well, that could be correlated to race, and that could be why that's happening because of bias. And then the AI says, oh, we didn't look at race. Well, it looked at something that correlates to race. So it's kind of hidden and it looks more neutral than it is. Then there's other new forms of bias. AI could find other things that, other characteristics about people that people can't control that are likely to affect their uh, their decision. So example would be, one that near and dear to my heart. What if the algorithms found that bald people are, less likely to get hired, and therefore, the data shows that bald people are just not a good hire. Now, it could be because people are biased against baldness, and baldness is not a protected category. Uh, but now it's like reified into the algorithm, and now systematically, the bias against bald people is going to be carried forth by the algorithm in a way that it's hard to escape. I'm not sure that's a good future. I'm not sure we want algorithms doing that or kind of creating new bases of bias on things that people ultimately can't control. And so I think that's very problematic. Okay, data analysis. There are a lot of things here that I want to talk about. Surveillance, identification, interpretation, and deciphering, and limitation and oversight. These are where AI is used to analyze data. And so let's look at some of these, and I'll walk through these, and I'm going to try to speed this up a little bit because there's a few more things I want to talk about. So surveillance. There's a lot of surveillance in our society already. What AI can do, what makes AI, I think, concerning is that AI can make the impacts of surveillance more severe. And that's because if you have a surveillance camera, you typically have always needed a human to watch the surveillance camera. And so there were limits to what you could do with surveillance because you needed humans to kind of be watching to find out when someone was doing something wrong. But now you can train AI on it, and AI can actually watch or kind of go through the footage and then pluck out instances for review. And that now makes the analysis of the data of the surveillance much more easy, and it makes it easier to go through a lot more surveillance footage without the need of a human. And that efficiency makes the surveillance worse because now you could have a lot more cameras, and there's no limitation on human time. The AI is going to reduce that, which then supercharges the surveillance. So that's a problem. We're going to move much more into a surveillance society with AI at the helm. Identification. AI makes identification easier. We see this with facial recognition technology. Now it becomes harder and harder to go about one's daily life without being identified everywhere one goes. When you're identified, it basically links you to a dossier of data. And then that will allow you to be treated in different ways and decisions to be made about you. It makes it easier to round up people, makes it easier to do a lot of things that are very troubling and problematic. So it changes the equation for identification in ways that are concerning. Also, AI assists with the interpretation and deciphering of information. What this is that, there's a lot of data being collected. And previously it was limited to, well, you got all this data, but now you have to make sense of it all. But AI can help with that process and make that more efficient, which then supercharges the use of the data, supercharges what the data can reveal about people. It takes the data and makes it much more efficient to learn things about people and then ultimately to use it in ways that affect people's lives. And then I think that what we're seeing is that the government can use AI systems to infer extensive data about people that it possesses. So the government has a lot of information about people, and AI is now going to allow for new ways to uh, analyze the data to learn more about people than the government already knows. And that's a problem because we have so much existing data already in the hands of government, in the hands of the private companies. And now this data with AI is going to be used to generate even more data through inferences. Limitation and oversight. This is another category of issues that AI affects. And there's actually quite say a brief word about this, is that AI makes it very hard to have limitation and oversight of data uses because AI supercharges it. So it makes these problems harder to oversee and regulate. Oversight, participation, and accountability. These are things that the law tries to do, and AI complicates them. And in particular, I identify 5 ways that AI can complicate oversight, participation, and accountability. And I'll go through them quickly, and then that's the end of this talk. So transparency. AI makes transparency very hard. Privacy laws long relied on transparency. If you just tell people what they're doing, that is the law's approach. The problem is that AI is really hard to explain. It's really hard to be transparent. And I think that if you want transparency to really be meaningful, automated decisions must be comprehensible. People have to understand what they mean. Transparency for its own sake doesn't mean anything. Transparency should really inform people. And the problem is that people aren't equipped to analyze complex algorithms. People aren't expert computer scientists. They're not AI experts, and they can never be expected to be AI experts. So transparency is not going to help. We need something more. Due process is affected with AI. We have due process issues when it comes to the use of AI. AI is being used to make decisions about people, and people lack a meaningful way to challenge AI decisions. How do you challenge it? How do you challenge the algorithm? I can say, okay, I don't like the logic of the algorithm, but I need expert computer scientists on my side to help me understand the logic. But a lot of times the problems are the data it's trained on. But you can't just give the individual like billions and billions of pieces of data. That's personal data. It's a privacy violation. Individuals can't get all that data, and I can't understand it. So to really understand how the algorithm's making a decision about me, I have to get the data and then analyze all that data, and I can't do it. But then I'm being decisions are being made about me in ways that I can't possibly understand or challenge, for that matter. And a lot of times we see this in sentencing, where sentencing decisions are made based on an algorithm, and then the companies with the algorithm say, hey, you can't see it because trade secrecy. It turns out actually that one of the main algorithms that's used for sentencing, called Compass, study showed it was biased. It was biased. It was racially biased. But there were defendants were trying to challenge this, and the court said, well, it's a trade secret. We can't let you really analyze the algorithm. These are big problems. Stakeholder involvement. The decisions about AI are basically being made by a bunch of billionaires. And what about society? What about various constituencies in society? Shouldn't they have a voice too in the direction of AI? And right now they really don't. It's really just a bunch of billionaires kind of deciding what AI is going to be like and how it's going to be run. And I kind of think the law might be needed to force greater stakeholder involvement. Accountability. How are we going to get good accountability for the use of AI? That's another challenge the law has to do. It's very hard if it's so complex, and you need to look at all the data. So it becomes another problem. And then enforcement and remedies. How do we have good remedies for AI? And this is a big challenge too, because there's a lot of AI has so much at stake. There's so much money in AI that a remedy or a penalty is often so small in relation to the potential gain that a company will have with AI that it's not going to be sufficient enough incentive for a company to follow the law. So I think we need to really think hard about remedies, because unless we have really powerful remedies, it's going to be really difficult for the law to be effective, to be followed. And one of the remedies that we see being used sometimes is what's called algorithmic disgorgement. Like making a company delete the algorithm. But that's not very practical, actually. It doesn't work particularly well in practice. Yes, some companies will delete the algorithm, but by the time they delete, the algorithm, they're often on to a new algorithm. So yeah, let's say we find, first of all, we're never going to have a court or the FTC or anyone order ChatGPT to be deleted. We're not going to have OpenAI delete ChatGPT. It's just not going to happen. No one, there's no agency that would have the guts to do something that bold. And even by the time they did it, it would be like ChatGPT, you know, 3 or 4. By the time then, they'll be on to ChatGPT 6 by the time that happens. So it'll be a little too late. And that's the problem. We need a real remedy that's going to really create the kind of deterrence and following the law that we need. Okay. Broadly, I'll just conclude by saying, the outdated approaches that persist in privacy laws are really unsuitable for managing the complexities of AI. They really just don't work very well. And I think AI shows just how that is. Um, and this is the time to start rethinking privacy law. And so my ultimate takeaway is that rather than just rush into, oh, we're just going to pass these new AI laws, I think it's time to don't forget about the existing privacy law because the privacy issues in AI are often not addressed by the new privacy laws. And we need to go back and retrofit the existing privacy laws, fix them, and make them suitable to address the problem. I think that's a much better way than to try to then pass all these new laws that often don't address all the privacy problems and thinking, oh, well, the existing privacy laws are going to get to these problems. They're not. They're not doing the job. But they could do the job if we actually got the laws right. So I think the lesson here is, this is a great opportunity to go back and relook at and re-examine the privacy laws that we have and try to update them and get them to work better rather than to try to put AI on a pedestal or put it in its own special little box and then think that we're just going to regulate that in and of itself. Because I think AI is a kind of continuation of what's been going on in privacy for decades now. It's not something special. It's not something so unique that it needs a whole separate regulatory regime. What we need, though, is a good privacy regime for that. So it's a call for privacy law to get into this and do this. So that's basically a wrap on this. My paper is below if you want to look at it. I hope that some of you do. And that is the overview of what we have before us, which is a lot.